Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you as part of this Planetary Health Film Lab. I hope all is going well, and this lab proves to be very beneficial to you from several perspectives. Beyond the technical know-how that I hope you pick up, I also hope you form contacts for your future work, that you create new ideas for your work and become inspired, really, to reach as many other people as possible in the future with meaningful, credible messages that will result in thoughtful individual and societal change. Now, I have put up a few slides to help me in this. So there. So let me introduce myself. My name is Charles Hopkins, and I hold the UNESCO chair in Reorienting Education towards Sustainability. I do this at York University in Toronto, Canada. I've been involved in sustainability issues such as climate change for many years, and I've been asked to say a few words today regarding the importance of youth gaining a stronger voice and influencing international agencies, including the UN climate change and other conferences. So never really in the history of humanity at any rate, has the world faced so many environmental threats. Climate change is really climate emergency. We're losing biodiversity at an alarming rate. Our oceans are not only heating, reducing flora and fauna, but being choked with plastic, and we continue to produce toxic chemicals that are harmful to humans and to wildlife. For millions of people, access to fresh water and sanitation is a growing challenge. And these issues are interlaced. And to date, we've not really found a way to address them in any synergistic way. We work on them one at a time, often without even attacking the root cause. This is likely to get worse in the short run if we only try to perfect their current approaches. And simply doing our current approaches better is not really the answer. These are complex issues and often referred to as wicked issues that are faced by many and that no one country can solve. But strangely, every individual can play a part, contributing their own strength or talent. Now, the World Economic Forum, this is a huge gathering, largely of multinationals and large business, but also of ministers of finance and so on from around the world. The World Economic Forum has its radar on the future of the global economy, and it tries to plot its course for the future. This is a list of the 10 top issues that it sees. On the left is the 2-year horizon. And let's look at even the top 5 threats. 2 are social issues, 2 are environmental, and 1 is the geopolitical. But if we look out 10 years from now, for the top 5, 4 of them are environmental, and 1 is a social issue. So we really, you can't separate social from environmental issues, because often an environmental collapse will result in a social collapse, which results in an economic collapse, or vice versa. So because these things are so interwoven, we really do need new approaches. The challenge then is how can we collaboratively create systems that ensures both that our ability to thrive equitably, that is everyone all around the planet. And how can we do that without collapsing the Earth's ability to support humanity as our population grows and our needs seem to continually get bigger rather, not necessarily better. So the challenge, the way in which we are trying to address it, is that we talk about the global approach is called sustainable development. It's really a united effort of countries, multinationals, UN agencies, cities, towns, even individually, all working together to try and come up with a unified way of approaching this. Now, we've been really trying to do this for a very, very long time. Back in 1987, we agreed upon sustainable development as the overarching framework that we would all collectively try to work together on. And in 1992, we came up with an implementation plan, how to do this. This is negotiated. It took 5 years of negotiating. And the outline of sustainable development is described in 1987 in the book, Our Common Future. In 1992, we came up with the first implementation plan called Agenda 21. And then after that, we had, that ran till 2000. And then in 2000 to 2015, we had the Millennium Development Goals. And then now from 2015 to 2030, we have the Sustainable Development Goals. All of this in a context of what we call people, looking after society, planet, looking after the environment, prosperity, looking after the economy, but doing it in a culture of peace and through partnerships, realizing that no one can do it, that we have to work together. Now, if where does youth come into all of this? Well, first of all, it's the idea of there's really no set criteria for youth. We usually think of youth being the sequel to children, youth being from age 15 to 24. But it varies. Sometimes at conferences, it'll go up to 30, sometimes even up to 35, sometimes drop down into 12, but generally, let's say, speaking of 15 to 24. Sometimes we look at where do we get youthful voices, sometimes young professionals, sometimes those who are in the early stages of career. But the importance of this, there are two aspects. One is the sheer numbers of youth in the world. And the other is that because of these numbers, it is only morally right that they are the ones, you are the ones who will inherit the earth. You are the ones that are going to have to implement the implementation plans that we're working on now. Because within about 2 years, we'll be working on the sequel to the Sustainable Development Goals that'll go from 2030 to 2050, and it'll be on your shoulders. Now, most people are not aware, but the sheer numbers of youth. The average age in Africa, pick Africa, because Africa is probably the hardest hit continent by by climate change. The average age in Africa is 18. Yes, 18 years old. So youth are more than half of the population of Africa at the moment. So why are we not listening? In Niger, the country of Niger in Africa, the average age is 15.2. In Mali, it's 16.3. In Nigeria, the large, by far, one of I think the 5th largest country in the world, the average age is 18.6 years old. Now, the world average, 26% of the population of the world is under 15. So how can, so that means that almost a third of the world would constitute either children or youth. Why are we not listening? In Latin America and the Caribbean, the average age of the whole region is 31 years old. Once again, if the cutoff is 24, then we are still talking about 25 to 30% of the population. In India, half of the population would qualify, almost half, as youth, because the average age is 28, right, in some cases. So how do we engage with, to date, most of it is trying to target youth, right? We try to build awareness within youth. We include it in curriculum. We try teaching, training youth, and so on. And we are successful. We come up with plans as to how to engage youth more. We're coming up with trying to get youth advice in curriculum development. We try to look at not simply teaching, but hands-on learning, trying to build compassion and so on. Engaging them in competition with scientific approaches and so on. However, we need to go beyond the targeting. We need to be learning with youth. We need to be learning from youth regarding how to come up with messaging, how to reach people. How do we come up with the media skills to really actually engage? How do we learn youth perspectives? Because, as I say, simply doing what we're doing more of it or doing it better is not really the answer. We have to come up with transdisciplinary formats that actually engage with those of who will be most affected. That is youth. Those youth will carry out the implementation, and they will be the most affected, of course, by this in the end. So we need to look at how do we do this in the way of youth meetings, finding youth speakers, panels, and so on. In our meetings, we quite often at the UN, we come up with a whole theme about youth, with youth, for youth, with youth as speakers, and special training to give youth the competencies to stand up, to speak, to how do you get the information from other youth? How do you build this into a message that is there? Now, in March of this year, the UN Secretary General formed a youth advisory group on climate change to provide him with practical, outcome-focused advice, diverse youth perspectives from different cultures and different regions around the world, to come up with concrete recommendations for his staff and for himself. Recommendations with a clear focus on accelerating the implementation of his climate action agenda around what he's so passionate about. This advisory group was convened under the auspices of the United Nations. It was the first ever system-wide youth strategy called Youth 2030 and the Common Agenda. Remember the book that originated with the concept of sustainable development. The Youth Advisory Group serves as a mechanism for the Secretary General to hear directly from young people as his organization works to accelerate global climate action and to drive forward all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But this youth advisory group, like all youth advisory groups, need the input of other youth. It can't just be the perspectives of a few people. So we need to start working at how do we get information to them. So we need to look at ways in which other youth can influence the youth leaders, whether it's through the media, through film, television, and so on, or whether it's through the internet, et cetera. We need ways to move beyond simply informing youth, to actually engaging youth in new approaches that are locally relevant and culturally appropriate. We need to figure out how to scale up, not only with effective messaging, but means of ongoing interaction, of listening, learning together as peers, and then getting that information into sort of into other ways. So we do have youth movements, but as adults, and it has to be, so we need to start thinking of these youth movements differently. Many of the youth movements that began, the climate action groups and so on, for instance, the school strike for climate and Fridays for Future and so on. These movements, as they emerge, often the students themselves were punished. We need to, instead of punishing student engagement, we must create globally minded citizens with compassion and the skills to engage. That's what our youth need to become. So youth have to, through our education system, educators must start thinking about how to give youth the skills to research an issue, to form opinions, to create messages and get those messages out to the masses to hopefully influence and even engage themselves in the solution. We need to advise on how to reach and engage with your generation to learn with them in that peer setting. And the skills in climate and other sustainability issues should become part of language arts classes so that they learn how to publicly speak, how to form messages and so on. In media literacy, with the concept of climate change, work on prevention, mitigation, and adaptation strategies. How can these things be actually infused in science classes? So we need these schools to develop cross-cutting competencies in youth, such as critical thinking and media literacy. These should be outcomes of all education that is focused on and for sustainable development. So let me tell you a quick story of an intergenerational collaboration that has achieved global impact, that had its beginning with youth. In India, about 10 years ago, they were teaching about climate change in a classroom, and in a grade 4 classroom. And this young girl, about 9 or 10 years old, was listening as they held up balloons to show the number of Earths that would be needed if everyone in India lived in the same way as the people in the North did. But at any rate, they were talking about the ecological footprint of people. And this little girl said, I have hands. I can do something about my footprints. And the teacher started to think about the analogy of ecological handprint being the solution to the ecological footprints. Now, it would have stopped there, although the idea came from the little girl, if the adult teacher had not picked it up and took it forward to a non-governmental organization in India called the Center for Environmental Education. They saw the power the concept. They took it to the Ministry of Environment. The Ministry of Environment then started working with media and building. They came up with campaigns called the Ecological Handprint. It spread across all of India into Africa and is spreading through Europe and in North America. A powerful idea that is hopeful and that inspires people. But once again, it is an intergenerational thing that started with young people in collaboration with others. So at any rate, I hope that you found this interesting. I hope it is useful. Perhaps we'll get you thinking and so on. And at any rate, I'm sorry there's no time really for questions. I would love to hear your thoughts and your ideas, but I'm sure that the other faculty and other speakers will be able to handle any of your questions you may have. So I wish you well, not only for the course, but I truly wish you well for your future. You and your expertise is so desperately needed. Thank you for listening.